Okay, welcome back everyone. I hope you are all suitably refreshed during the break. So we have gone through the second module, which is all about the tripod theory of incident causation and the tripod beta technique itself, okay, in all its full glory. And then we have also looked at, in module 3, the software functionalities, yeah? How to use the software. Now comes the all-important question, which is how, from the timeline, information available in the timeline, how do we then convert it into our tripod beta analysis? Or how to conduct a tripod beta analysis from the timeline. So for that, I have to sit down again and use the software. Now, the thing is, when you first started off, what you did was, when you registered the incident the first time round, what happens is that these two things appear, right? Timeline diagram, tripod beta diagram. Now, if you use the incident manager, what happens is that if you click on the analysis and you click on this particular node here, tripod beta diagram, it takes you directly to the tripod beta window. So, for the novice, for the beginners, they are already thinking, oh, does that mean that I have to go back to the timeline diagram, copy each and every one of those entries, and enter into this little red, yellow boxes, whatever color? But to me, that sounds a bit awkward, yeah, cumbersome. So an elegant way of doing it, I like elegance because I'm a mathematician, partly speaking, okay, is to go to the timeline, see where the timeline is, here, okay, you click all and then drag it all the way to the bottom here. You see there's a little box down at the bottom and where my arrow is. After that, you let go. See what happens. What happens is that you create two windows. One is the timeline window, and the other one is the tripod beta window. So, let's get rid of this particular entity. So when we create the tripod beta, when we want to create the tripod beta diagram, first and foremost, you have to identify the main event on the timeline. The main event, as we saw in the lectures in module 2, is the event that causes the consequence. Yeah. So the main event in this case is the person falling from the scaffold, right? And ending up in the water. So how do we then transfer it onto the tripod beta window? If you look at the entries down here, it's on the red timestamp here. Control Alt and left click on your mouse. You drag this entity into the tripod beta window. So see what happens? You don't even have to retype anything because the entry is already there. But notice that when you drag that particular entity into the tripod beta window, it is not the tripod beta shape. Remember, the tripod beta shape is different, right? This has a neutral blue color around the edges. In order to convert it into a tripod beta shape, now this is normally the main event is an intermediate event. So this becomes an event agent. See? So And then you have the person landing in water, okay? And then you create the consequence, yeah? Now, there are two versions of this. You can either say potential person drowns. Sorry, can't spell. Or drowned. You can do this. Or you can just say person drowned and use the software functionality. Oops. If you double click on the edges of the entity here, you bring up the editor. You see here appearance, right? There's a functionality called appearance, and you can select. Okay, you can either say it's an agent, object, event, event, agent, event, object, threat, consequence, stop, event. But in this case, it's potential but not reached. That means to say, the person drowned in this case is a potential event, but it didn't happen. So it's a near miss. Okay? This is how you depict it using the software. But if you use one of these manual techniques using some Excel templates or whatever, you have to put potential there and then person drowned. Okay? So we have an agent in the form of person falling into the water, and therefore what is the object? The object is life of personnel. So you see, life of personnel still living, right? And then it changes state to person drowned, means he lost his life. Huh? So that's correct. That's correct, yeah. So what happened prior to this? Person slipped, broke through the barrier, fell in the water. What happened before? So this is determined by another entry in the timeline, which is maintenance personnel on scaffold. Again, this is an intermediate agent object, or rather agent event. So what would be the object in this case? The object would be slippery scaffold floor, right? That causes him to slip and fall. So this is where you extract the information from the timeline. Again, Control Alt drag. So that appears here. You can link the two. Okay. The two entities. Now, I'll just say reword this a little bit just to make it simple. Sorry, it's jammed now. Anyway, so maintenance personnel on scaffold. Is that really now the wording, the way it is worded? Okay, does that mean that it's an event? I would think that this is more like an event object. then this entity down here, okay, would be an agent. That would be correct, because then this slippery straw will cause that person on the scaffold to change state. That means he slipped and broke through the barrier and ended up in water. And what caused the maintenance personnel on scaffold? Well, basically, there was a need for him that's why he was on the scaffold, right? Need for repair and servicing of equipment. So what next? Here, the object would be, if you need something to be maintained, you have to make sure that your is available to do the job. And that actually, what you call the fact that he's available, maybe resting somewhere or just finished on another assignment, he was made to climb the scaffold so that he can complete the repair and maintenance of that overhead equipment. Right? So that's the core diagram. As you will recall during the lectures, the core diagram, the core diagram is a diagram showing the sequence of the tripod beta trio without the barriers. And why do we have to set up the core diagram first? Because we need to understand the logical event progression that led to the incident. So in this case, if we say things like the first event was maintenance personnel on scaffold, and then he encounters scaffold floor which was slippery, and that causes him to slip, and then he ends up in water. Not drowning in this case, but was eventually rescued. So does that make sense or not, logically? Okay, so that's a test of your core diagram. So what's the next step? The next step is to actually identify the barriers that should have stopped the event from happening, right? So let's go to the timeline again, if I can find it. So the timeline diagram says it's missing somehow or other. So let's just say the first barrier should be your guardrail. That should stop people from falling, right? Or falling into the water, rather. Next thing is where proper PPEs. Now, can somebody tell me what these barriers are? Is it control or defense barriers? Control barriers, correct. Control barriers are there to prevent it from causing the event. So these are the control barriers. Where proper PPE, I can embellish it by saying non-slip, safety shoes, and safety harness. Okay, here we have the defense barriers to protect the, oops, I think I got it on the wrong, this one. one. So let me cut, paste, cut, paste. Drag this a bit. So here, the slippery floor. If you recall, we had something like matting, right? Matting is supposed to be placed, right? So place matting on scaffold. Second one is inspection and housekeeping. Yeah. After the inspection, you need to clean up the grease, the oil, or whatever that you need on the scaffold. Now, the barriers on that consequent side, I would say that all of the barriers there were worked effectively, yeah, because the person didn't drown, he was rescued. So here we have, as the first control barrier, we have work vest with buoyancy. This will ensure that he stays afloat, first and foremost, for the rescue team to rescue him later, right? And then watchman on duty to alert the ERT. And then finally, you have the water rescue team. Yeah? And then here you have medical checkup to ensure that he's still living. Right, so that sets up the barriers that should have stopped the incident, okay? And also to recover from the incident if it happens. That's the one here. So what is the next step after we've identified the barriers? Remember, the barriers, as I've told you during the lectures, the information on the barriers are obtained by looking at your job-related risk assessments, yeah? Your JHA, job hazard analysis, permit to work will specify all the barriers like non-slip safety shoes, harness, netting, and whatnot. Yeah. Okay. So let's deal with this side first. All of these barriers. Now we assess the state of the barriers. Yeah. All of these barriers are actually effective, yeah? Because the person didn't drown, didn't die, so it's effective. Watchman on duty also, he did his job, so he alerted the ERT, so effective. Water rescue operations also effective because the guy was rescued, and medical checkup also gave him the all care. This is effective. Here is a different story altogether. We know that the guardrails didn't really stop the guy from falling, right? Because he broke through the barrier. And there were proper PPE, non-slip safety shoes and safety harness. Did it do its job? No. But because it was in a worn-out state, a certain level of grip, it did perform its function, but it was inadequate. So we can turn this barrier, we identify its state as ineffective. So you see the notation for ineffective barrier. And then place matting on scaffold. Was there any matting at all in the first place? No. So this is missing. Correct. Inspection and housekeeping, was it done? But the housekeeping and inspectors were there, right? And they were assigned to a different job. Okay, fine. So this is failed. He failed. He didn't perform the job. Okay, so the next step is to perform the causation assessment on the failed, inadequate, and missing barriers. So the barriers on the consequence side, the recovery barriers were okay. Everything was effective because it ended up the guy was rescued, given the medical checkup, and so forth. So here, gut rate. Now remember during the lectures, I said that one way of identifying the immediate cause of a barrier is to think of the immediate cause as the invert of the barrier, reverse of the barrier. If the barrier says guardrail, so what can we say here? Personnel broke through barrier in falling. Correct? That's what it says in the timeline, right? Okay, why did it break through the barrier? The barrier was not adequately secure. And why was it not adequately secure? Yeah, maintenance. Alright. So maintenance in relation to pre-work inspection. Schedule for pre-work inspections of safety barriers not adequate. And this comes under when we look when we try and determine the BRF, basic risk factor, comes under maintenance management. Yeah. Although it might have been performed by operations people, it's still described as maintaining a barrier. Okay, maintaining the integrity of a barrier. So it comes under maintenance management. So that's one causation. Here, wear proper PPE, non-slip safety harness, or non-slip safety shoes and safety harness. So here we clearly have a problem. Okay, so we say what it is like. Personnel or shoes with worn out soles and worn out safety harness. Okay, why did he wear all those things?
Because the delivery was delayed.
You're jumping the gun.
Okay.
You're jumping the gun. Because there were
No.
spares were unavailable. And why were the spares unavailable? Now we come to two things really. One is because inadequate inventory of PPEs, and also because this up a bit so that I can pull this down. System for managing and following up with suppliers inadequate. Correct or not? Because okay, it's delayed. So what are you going to do about it? Or is it you just leave it to the supplier to supply you whenever they are ready? You cannot do that, right? So here it comes under system for managing suppliers comes under organizational factor, and inadequate inventory of PPEs comes under defenses. So place matting on scaffold. Now notice that if you have a missing barrier, the moment you click the causation path, it goes straight to the underlying cause, the yellow box. But the latest convention for tripod beta is that even for underlying cause, you have to do the full causation analysis. So what you do is, let's undo that. You first and foremost call it failed barrier, and then click that gray button underneath to bring up the immediate cause shape, and then only you change it back to missing. So that will ensure the full causation path will appear. So place matting on scaffold. Was there any scaffold matting?
No.
So no matting place. You see, place matting on scaffold. The invert will be no matting place. So that's normally the way that you identify your immediate cause. It's the reverse of the barrier. So why no matting was placed? Well, first and foremost, no inspections were done, right? To determine necessity of mattings. And then why pre-work inspection was not performed?
No.
They were not available. So there could be two things here. Poor work planning or, okay, even if let's say they were not available, should you have proceeded with the job?
Sure.
I don't think so. Because a good safety management system would have stopped the job from taking place, from happening. Because there were certain inadequacies. Somehow or other, your procedure says pre-work inspection must be done. If it's not done, then don't do it.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? Stop work, huh? So one is poor work planning. And you really can't spell it. Anyway.
So it's the personal fault juga lah.
So another reason why is because pre-work inspection ignored in favor of completing the job quickly. Okay? After all, this is a vital piece of communication equipment. No matter how urgent we need it to repair in order to maintain our communication line with HQ or our families or whatever it may be. But then, it's done at the sacrifice of the person's safety. Yeah? So poor work planning comes under organizational factor, and then pre-work inspection, correct the spelling later, comes under incompatible goals, whereby, as we have seen during the lectures, incompatible goals is understood as production issues take priority over safety matters. So clearly in this case, because you want the equipment to be repaired somehow or other, you would rather sacrifice the person's safety in order to restore the equipment in its original condition. So inspection and housekeeping, not performed, right? I'll just be quick and say it's not performed. Why? Because the safety inspectors and housekeeping team were deployed elsewhere, right? And then here is where you determine the underlying cause. The reason for this is, again, poor work planning. So that completes the analysis. Now, the next step for you to do is, after the analysis has been completed, is for you to determine for this particular incident what is the BRF profile. For that to happen is you go to tools, you go to reports, and you see drop down here, you go to incident diagrams tripod, and then if you expand that, you see BRF code profile. You click on it, run. Okay? So it will open up automatically. Yeah? Now the BRF profile is not normally generated in the report. You might have to do it manually. So generate the BRF profile first. So what the BRF profile tells you for that particular incident, which BRF is responsible for that incident most. Here you can see it's organizational factors. All this supplier inadequacy, and then what else? Work planning, scheduling, and so on and so forth. This is the main culprit. There are other contributors as well: maintenance management, incompatible goals, as well as defenses. Okay? So the whole idea is that over the long run, within the organization, what happens is that you can generate, if you keep on doing tripod beta analysis for all your incidents, you can generate what you call this aggregate all the profiles like this and see which particular basic risk factors contribute most to incidents within the organization, and that applies to any kind of incidents, all kinds of incidents. That is a way of gauging the organization's health with respect to all the basic risk factors. Yeah. So that's how you do it. Now the thing is, the next step will be for you to generate the individual actions. Okay. Okay, if you have actions to generate, first and foremost, you identify what barriers need to restore. So this one, okay, guardrail, you use the, what do you call this, post-it note. Okay, and then you say rec, instead of act, it's rec, S01. So you fill up the fields. Okay, as well as use the drop-down menus where available. Who's responsible for signing off? When is the due date? All done using the SMART concept. Yeah? SMART concept. So once you have done that, okay, the short-term solutions are done directly on the barriers. But the longer-term solutions, like this one, for instance, system for managing following up with suppliers inadequate, they will take an extended duration of maybe months, because first you have to review your supplier management system. Then you have to determine which supplier should you be selecting the next time there is an order for PPEs. Which supplier needs to be audited for the inventory and stock of PPEs available, right? So that you can obtain it quickly. And then your payment patterns and things like that. So that takes a longer period. But whatever it is, the barriers need to be restored first before you ask somebody else to go and climb on a scaffold with hopefully better shoes and harnesses this time around. Okay? But all of this needs to be fixed. So how do you then generate the report? Go back to the incident manager. Now, before that, once you list out all the recommendations, it will appear automatically on this tab. Under this tab, all your recommendations will appear, even on the timeline. These are the ones on the timeline. But if you add it on the barriers and on the underlying causes, there will be quite a few more added. Attachments, one word of warning. Do not attach any videos.
Why?
I had one experience last time when I was attending the trainers with Anapon. We attached a video of train collision or something like that. It took ages to open. Really. So do not attach any big size files, not just videos, but big size files. So report, let's look at the reports. How do you generate the report? If you click this particular icon here, the report, first and foremost, you need to save it into your file, into your computer. Okay, I got this under IXP training for tomorrow. Save it. The moment you save, see the report will appear automatically in Word. So you were asking just now, Daniel, about how to reach out to all the other people within the particular organization. So one of the methods I suggested is that you set it up through email, this report. It's all in Word. And the idea is that you can actually customize the report. All this stuff in red are for you to fill up. You might have your own report version, or authors. Authors will be whoever is the lead investigator, whatever it may be. And then see, even the contents are all laid out nicely for you. This part you have to come up with your own write-up. executive summary, because the incident will be different for different write-ups, will be different for different incidents. And then all the recommendations, all the analysis, so everything that you've entered in the incident XP is picked up in the report. Even the timeline, here's the timeline, see? But for the tripod beta diagram, because tripod beta diagram is fairly complex, right? What it does is that it breaks up the tripod beta diagram into nodes. You get a full tripod beta diagram like this. Well, it's not full yet, but it's just the core diagram with some barriers and barrier states identified, but there's no causation. The causation is done by breaking up it into nodes, into trios, and then you will see the causation perform. There you go. So, in conclusion, therefore, the incident XP, as opposed to doing things manually, is really a productivity tool. If you do things manually, like using Excel template or whatever it may be, I can tell you, it takes ages. And even the report you have to write up. But this one, almost about 80 to 85% of the work is already done if you use by the incident XP as you enter the data, and then you need to fill up just a bit. So that concludes the demo, and I think we'll send you out to do your exercises tomorrow on day 2. And then after you've completed the exercise, we will go into the day 3 module, which is the advanced module, learning from incidents. Okay, so after this, you will be working on the exercise on the car rollover, vehicle rollover, doing the same things that I've done. Okay, analyze the incident, and then come up with recommendations, come up with a report. Okay.